life insurance, and we just put out a story, one of John's stories about life insurance. So could you just talk about that real quick before we get into the questions? I know that this changed your mind on how life insurance is such a, what do you say, an act of love for your family.
Oh yeah.
All right, could you just
Well,
run through that story?
yeah, no doubts. In your statement about active love, I tell people, you're not buying life insurance for you. You're buying it for your loved ones. And, and it is an act of love because, if you're typically, if you have children, you're married or cohabitating or whatever the deal is, um, in some way you have people that have a financial interest in you, meaning that you're earning income, which is providing a lifestyle. I had a situation where I had a couple in their early to mid 30s, professionals in the medical field, um, had two children. I think they were 2 and 4 at the time. Went out for their dining out evening, came headed home and got hit head on by a drunk driver and killed both of them. And really shocking. Obviously, in any circumstance, would be very shocking. But I had only been working with this client maybe a year and a half, and had both of them heavily insured. Had advised them, they needed to get a will, and with two minor children, both of them professionals, which always tells me they probably came from strong families, and they did. And so, the first topic I discussed with them was, well, who do you want to raise your kids if something happens to you? And they don't get asked that question too often. So, in that circumstance, it wasn't both of the in-laws and mother and father of each of the adults, grandparents that is, they chose the sister of the wife to be the guardian. And, I said, well, that's fine. Do you have a will? No. Well, you need a will. You need to set up a guardianship arrangement. You need to set up a trust. We can fund the trust with life insurance as a death benefit. The long of the story is I get a call on a Saturday morning, a shocking call. The mother-in-law of the guy called me to inform me. He said of the deaths of our kids, and I'm going, kind of shocked me. But long of the story is that got involved getting it settled for the will trust. Life insurance company paying the money out. They did. The guardianship issue went into place, and it was, I won't say it was a perfect result because nothing is ever perfect about a sudden loss of people, but the life insurance was the money that funded the trust that permitted the grandparents, and they called me later to thank me, to say that, because of what their kids had done, their adult children, that is, it kept both sets of grandparents from having to come out of retirement to support these kids, because we had enough life insurance in place to fund the trust, to fund the care, well-being of the grandchildren, as well as give them the opportunity to have an education if they chose to go to college or whatever, so that the grandparents weren't strapped without a economic and financial burden to deal with in the future. And so, it's as a financial advisor, licensed, and I am licensed insurance as well as securities. It's never easy to deal with something like that, but in the end, my purpose of what I do professionally, I was able to see the results of the planning fall into place with a good result. And I'm sure today gosh, that's been probably 15 years ago, but I'm sure today the two kids are probably getting a good college education somewhere that was paid for with life insurance. And, you know, I tell people, so don't get bogged down with all the crap you hear or the he said, she said, and what kind of life insurance. And, you know, people get all in that swamp and they can't ever get out. You know, my statement is life insurance is money, period. I mean, you know, just to make a funny comment, you know, I'll deal with somebody that's maybe making $300,000 a year. Ask them, I say, you know, how much life insurance do you have in place? Oh, I've got $100,000 at work. Oh, really? What else do you have? Well, that's it. And of course, I get away with this because I've been out there long enough. I said, well, you don't plan to be dead long, do you?
Yeah.
They said, what do you mean? So, all right, so you've got 100. You're making 100 and a half. So in other words, you're giving your family about 6, 7, 8 months of comfort. What are they going to do after that? Well, my wife can go to work, or my husband can go to work, whatever it is. I'm saying, look, how long has she been out of the workforce? You know, you're creating a whole different problem there because now you got daycare. And I don't know how many people out there pay for daycare, but it's almost like buying a Mercedes Benz, what they're paying each month to have quality childcare. But
Go ahead.
always remember life insurance is money. Now, buy enough if it's term insurance, my rule of thumb is 10 times earnings. So if you make 100, buy you $1 million of coverage. You know, but with proper planning, you can adjust that number. But also don't overlook the fact that, okay, if you've got the primary breadwinner who's making most of the money, you still have the other spouse staying and caring for the kids. And always bring up the topic is if something were to happen to your spouse, but you're still the primary breadwinner, you still need life insurance on that spouse to provide cash, money, whatever you want to call it, to help care for those kids while you're still out working. So it's two sides to the story, and it's you know, you start out understanding why you need it, and then you got to look at what can you afford to do. But you know, the vast majority of people in this country are grossly underinsured. Period.